The frigid mountain air of Firebase Echo sliced through Captain Maya Chen's tactical gear like it was made of tissue paper. She stood motionless on the observation deck, watching the gathering dusk settle over the snow-covered peaks of northeastern Afghanistan, her expression as unreadable as the classified files she'd been reviewing for the past 6 hours. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The whispers followed her everywhere on base. You could hear them in the mess hall, in the barracks, in the hushed conversations that stopped when she entered a room. That's her, the one who froze. The one who couldn't pull the trigger when it mattered most. Firebase Echo wasn't a place for second chances. It was a remote outpost for soldiers whose careers were on a clear trajectory, either upward toward commendation or downward toward obscurity. Most people assumed Captain Chen was on the latter path. They were wrong. The mission that had defined her reputation had happened 3 months ago. A high-priority extraction that had gone catastrophically wrong by any standard metric. 4 operators injured, 2 critically, and a primary target lost in the chaos of an ambush that shouldn't have happened in the first place. The official report was sealed, accessible only to those with clearance levels most soldiers at Echo couldn't even pronounce. But rumors traveled faster than classified documents, and the story everyone believed was simple. Captain Chen had frozen in combat, paralyzed by fear when decisive action was needed. Major Dawson appeared beside her on the deck, his breath forming clouds in the mountain air. "Still punishing yourself, Chen?" he asked, not unkindly. Dawson had been at Echo longer than almost anyone, a career officer who'd seen enough combat to know that the stories people told rarely captured the whole truth. "Just watching the weather, sir," Maya replied, her eyes never leaving the distant ridgeline where shadows were beginning to merge with darkness. "Storms coming in from the north. Might delay tomorrow's supply drop." Dawson studied her profile, noting the thin scar that ran from her right temple to her jawline, a souvenir from the infamous mission that had landed her at Echo. "Command called," he said after a moment. "The after-action report for Operation Shadowfall has been declassified. Limited distribution, but they're sending a copy here." Maya's expression didn't change, but Dawson noticed her hands tighten almost imperceptibly on the railing. "Any particular reason?" she asked, her voice betraying nothing. "Apparently someone up the chain thinks it's important. Should be here with tomorrow's dispatches, assuming the weather cooperates." He paused, then added, "You know, whatever that report says, it doesn't change what happened out there." "No, sir, it doesn't." Maya finally turned to face him, her dark eyes reflecting nothing but professional composure. "Is there anything else?" Dawson sighed. He'd seen that look before on soldiers who carried burdens too heavy to share. "The new tactical team arrives next week. Colonel Bryant wants you to help with their orientation. Says your knowledge of the local terrain might be useful." Maya nodded once, a sharp, efficient gesture that had become her trademark at Echo. "I'll be ready, sir." As Dawson walked away, Maya returned her gaze to the mountains, to the invisible border that separated Afghanistan from territories that officially weren't part of any American military operation. Territories where she'd led her team 3 months ago on a mission that had gone spectacularly wrong. At least according to the stories everyone believed. What they didn't know, what no one at Firebase Echo knew, was the small silver pin Maya wore on the inside of her uniform collar. No insignia, no unit designation, just a stylized owl with outstretched wings embracing a small dagger. The symbol of quantum shift, a program so classified that even mentioning its name in the wrong context could trigger security protocols most military personnel didn't know existed. Maya had been recruited into quantum shift 5 years ago, pulled from conventional special operations because of a unique skill set that combined tactical excellence with analytical capabilities that bordered on prescient. The program operated in spaces between official military operations, handling situations too sensitive for standard channels, gathering intelligence that couldn't be acquired through recognized means, and occasionally dealing with threats that officially didn't exist. The night had deepened around her, the temperature dropping with the swift certainty of mountain weather. Maya finally turned from the observation deck and made her way back to her quarters, a sparse room that contained nothing personal except a worn copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations and a small wooden box locked with a biometric scanner. Her nighttime routine was methodical check equipment, review intelligence reports, prepare for the next day's duties with the focused precision that had once made her one of the most promising officers in her class at West Point. The whispers followed her even here. She could feel them seeping through the thin walls, carried on the recycled air of the base's ventilation system. Chen froze when it mattered. Chen couldn't handle the pressure. Chen got her team shot up because she couldn't make the call. Maya ignored them as she had every night for the past 3 months. The truth was far more complicated than the stories, far more nuanced than black and white narratives about courage and cowardice. The truth was locked in an after-action report that almost no one was cleared to read, a report that was now inexplicably on its way to Firebase Echo. As she performed her nightly series of exercises, a blend of Tai Chi and combat drills designed to center both mind and body, Maya reflected on the mission that had brought her to this remote outpost, the decisions she'd made in a moment when seconds meant the difference between life and death, and the consequences that had followed. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Operation Shadowfall had been a standard extraction on paper, a high-value intelligence asset with critical information about terrorist cell movements in the region had requested immediate extraction from a village near the Pakistani border. Maya's Team 6 operators with specialized training in quick insertion, quick extraction scenarios had been deployed with minimal preparation, a calculated risk based on the asset's reported value. What the intelligence hadn't revealed was that the asset had been compromised, turned into bait for a trap designed specifically to capture American Special Operations personnel. The ambush had been professionally executed, with precision that suggested training beyond the capabilities of the local insurgent groups. Maya's team had been pinned down within seconds of touch and ground, caught in crossfire from elevated positions that hadn't appeared on any of their reconnaissance materials. That was when, according to the stories circulating through Firebase Echo, Captain Maya Chen had frozen, had stood paralyzed as her team took fire, unable to issue commands or make decisions that might have mitigated the damage, had been so overwhelmed by fear that her second-in-command had been forced to take control of the situation, ordering a fighting retreat that had saved lives but lost the objective. The reality had been different, but Maya couldn't explain that. To anyone without security clearance, she doubted even Major Dawson possessed. She couldn't tell them about the split-second analysis she'd performed, recognizing patterns in the ambush that matched tactics used by a specific counterintelligence group, not local insurgents, but highly trained operatives working for a nation that was officially an American ally. She couldn't explain that she'd hesitated not from fear but from the sudden, terrible realization that her team had been sent into a political situation far more complex than a simple extraction. And she definitely couldn't tell them about the communication she'd received through her quantum shift implant, the direct neural interface that allowed for instantaneous transmission of data between field operators and command, overriding her tactical instincts with a direct order that had made no sense in the moment. Stand down, do not engage specific targets, maintain cover protocols at all costs. So she had appeared to freeze, had allowed her second-in-command to assume control while she processed information flowing directly into her brain, Information that changed the entire context of the mission in ways she couldn't share with her team. And afterward, she had accepted the blame, had allowed her reputation to be damaged rather than compromise. Operational security for Quantum Shift. The price had been high assignment to Firebase Echo. Widespread belief that she had cracked. Under pressure, the quiet death of a once promising military career. But Maya had made peace with that cost. Some secrets were worth protecting, even at personal expense. Now, however, the after-action report was being declassified, at least partially, which meant something had changed. Someone wanted certain information to become available information. That might shift the narrative about what had happened during Operation Shadowfall. The question was why, and what it would mean for Maya's future. She completed her exercises and settled onto her bunk, closing her eyes but not sleeping. Quantum Shift operators were trained to enter a state of guided consciousness that allowed for rest, without the vulnerability of deep sleep, a necessary skill for those who operated in environments where threats could materialize without warning. In this twilight state, Maya sifted through possibilities, trying to anticipate what the arrival of the after-action report might mean. Morning arrived with the muffled roar of a transport helicopter, fighting against mountain winds to reach Firebase Echo. Maya was already awake, dressed and moving toward the command center where the daily briefing would begin in 15 minutes. The base was coming alive around her, soldiers emerging from barracks to face another day of the grinding routine that defined life at remote outpost patrols. Maintenance, training, intelligence work, all conducted against the backdrop of constant vigilance and the knowledge that they were hours away from any meaningful support if things went wrong. Maya entered the command center to find it already busy, with communications officers monitoring transmissions and intelligence analysts poring over satellite imagery of the surrounding terrain. Major Dawson was in conversation with a communications specialist, their discussion hushed but intense. When he saw Maya, he motioned her over. "Transport made it through before the weather turned," he said without preamble. "Supplies mail and dispatches are being unloaded now, including your after-action report." Maya nodded, maintaining the professional composure that had become her shield. "Thank you for letting me know, sir." "Chen," Dawson hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Whatever's in that report, I want you to know that you've done good work here. Your analytical skills, your knowledge of regional dynamics, they've been valuable to this base. I'd hate to lose that because of politics or bureaucracy." It was the closest Dawson had ever come to expressing direct support, and Maya felt a momentary flicker of appreciation. "Thank you, sir. But I doubt a single report is going to change much about my current situation." "Maybe not," Dawson conceded. "But in my experience, when classified documents suddenly become unclassified, it usually means someone is making a move in a game most of us don't even know we're playing." Before Maya could respond, the command center door opened and a young lieutenant entered, carrying a sealed diplomatic pouch with security markers that indicated its contents were still highly sensitive, even if technically declassified. "Major Dawson, priority dispatch from Central Command," the lieutenant announced, handing over the pouch with the careful formality of someone who understood its importance. Dawson accepted the pouch, verified his identity through a biometric scanner embedded in the seal, and removed a single data tablet, its screen dark until activated by authorized personnel. "Thank you, Lieutenant. That will be all." The lieutenant departed, but not before casting a curious glance at Maya, a look that said he knew exactly what the pouch contained and why it mattered. The whispers had reached him too, it seemed. Dawson turned to Maya, holding out the tablet. "This is addressed specifically to you, Captain. Whatever it contains, it's for your eyes only, at least initially." Maya took the tablet, feeling its weight, the physical weight of hardened military hardware, and the metaphorical weight of whatever information it contained. "Is there somewhere private I can review this, sir?" "Use my office," Dawson said, gesturing to a small room adjacent to the command center. "Take as long as you need." Maya nodded her thanks and entered the office, closing the door behind her. The room was spartanly furnished, a desk, 2 chairs, and a wall of secure communications equipment. No windows, no distractions, nothing but functional necessity. She sat at the desk, placed the tablet before her, and pressed her palm against the activation panel. The screen illuminated immediately, recognizing her biometric signature. A message appeared. "Operation Shadowfall. After Action Report. Declassified version. Authorized personnel only. Security protocols remain in effect." Maya took a deep breath and began to read, scanning through the standard preamble that outlined mission parameters, team composition, and operational objectives. Most of this was information she already knew, details she had lived through. She paused when she reached the section titled Incident Timeline and Analysis. The report was clinically precise, as military documents tended to be. It detailed the ambush, the injuries sustained by team members, the tactical retreat coordinated by her second-in-command. But what caught Maya's attention was a paragraph that had not been part of any briefing she'd received. Before or after the mission, intelligence analysis confirms that the extraction target, redacted, had been compromised approximately 72 hours before contact. Subject was under duress from operatives believed to be affiliated with redacted intelligence services. The ambush was orchestrated to capture American Special Operations personnel for interrogation regarding ongoing classified operations in the region. Captain Chen's decision to temporarily cede tactical control while processing neural interface data from Quantum Shift Command prevented the capture of personnel with knowledge of sensitive operations, thereby protecting critical national security interests. Maya read the paragraph 3 times, confirming that she had not misunderstood. The report explicitly acknowledged her connection to quantum shift information that was normally protected by the highest security classifications. More importantly, it validated her actions during the ambush, framing her apparent hesitation not as a failure of nerve, but as a deliberate tactical choice that had protected crucial intelligence. She continued reading, finding more revelations with each paragraph. The report confirmed that her second-in-command, Lieutenant Walker, had been briefed after the fact about the true nature of the situation and had provided a statement supporting Maya's actions. It noted that the injury patterns sustained by the team were consistent with precision fire aimed to wound rather than kill, supporting the assessment that capture had been the enemy's primary objective. Most significantly, the report concluded with a recommendation. Captain Chen's actions under extreme pressure demonstrate exceptional judgment and commitment to mission security protocols. Her willingness to accept personal and professional consequences rather than compromise sensitive operations exemplifies the highest traditions of service. It is the recommendation of this review board that Captain Chen be considered for immediate reassignment to appropriate duties, commensurate with her specialized training and demonstrated capabilities. As Maya set down the tablet, her mind raced with implications. The declassification of this report wasn't just about setting the record straight. It was a message, a signal that something had changed in the complex geopolitical landscape where Quantum Shift operated. Someone wanted her back in the field, wanted her specific skills for a new mission or operation. The question was who and why now? A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Captain Chen?" Major Dawson's voice came through the metal door. "There's someone here who's asking to see you. Says it's regarding the report." Maya rose from the desk, securing the tablet before opening the door. "Who is it, sir?" Dawson stepped aside to reveal a woman in civilian attire-tailored dark suit, practical shoes, the kind of nondescript professional appearance designed to blend into any formal setting without drawing attention. But Maya recognized her immediately as Colonel Julia Hayes, one of the founding architects of Quantum Shift and a legend, within intelligence circles for operations that had changed the course of conflicts without ever appearing in official histories. Captain Chen, Hayes said with a slight nod. It's been a while. Major Dawson looked between them, clearly sensing that he was witnessing a reunion that existed outside his frame of reference. I'll leave you two to talk, he said, demonstrating the discretion that had helped him survive decades in military intelligence. When Dawson had gone, Hayes turned to Maya with the faint smile of someone who rarely allowed herself such expressions. You've been through quite an ordeal, Captain. 3 months exiled to this mountaintop, your reputation in tatters, all to protect operational security for a program that technically doesn't exist. That's commitment beyond the standard call of duty. Maya maintained her professional composure, but inside, her mind was cataloging every detail of Hayes's unexpected appearance, the timing, the implication that she had arrived with the transport, carrying the after-action report, the fact that she had come in person rather than communicating through secure channels. The oath I took wasn't just to the military, ma'am. It was to the mission. Hayes nodded, her expression reflecting approval. And that's precisely why we need you back, Maya. Things have changed since Shadowfall. The players we thought we understood are making moves we didn't anticipate. We need operators who can think 3 steps ahead, who can see patterns where others see only chaos. What exactly are you proposing, Colonel? Maya asked, her voice carefully neutral despite the surge of adrenaline she felt at the prospect of returning to meaningful operations. A new assignment, Hayes replied, producing a secure data chip from her jacket pocket. One that builds on what you discovered during Shadowfall. The ambush wasn't just a random attempt to capture American operatives. It was part of a coordinated effort to identify quantum shift personnel. Someone knows about the program, Maya. Someone is hunting our people. The implications sent a chill through Maya that had nothing to do with the mountain cold. Quantum shift operated entirely in shadows, its very existence known only to a handful of officials at the highest levels of government and military command. If an external entity had identified the program and was targeting its operators, the national security implications were staggering. The after-action report, Maya said, understanding dawning. Its declassification wasn't about clearing my name, it was bait. Hayes smiled again, this time with genuine appreciation for Maya's quick analysis. Partially bait, partially protection. By acknowledging your connection to the program in an official document, we've placed you under a certain kind of spotlight. It makes you a harder target for those who might want to make you disappear quietly. And yes, it signals to whoever is hunting our people that we know they're looking, and we're not afraid to move pieces on the board. What's the mission, Colonel? Maya asked, already mentally preparing for whatever challenge Hayes was about. To present, we've identified a potential compromised operation in Sarajevo, Hayes said, her voice dropping to ensure absolute privacy despite the secure environment. 3 quantum shift operators have gone dark in the past month, all after reporting similar anomalous patterns in local intelligence networks. We need someone to go in, establish what's happening, and extract our people if possible. Sarajevo isn't exactly within Firebase Echo's operational territory, Maya noted. How do you plan to explain my sudden reassignment? Hayes handed her the data chip. That's all taken care of. The after-action report provides the official justification recognition of your actions during Shadowfall, reassessment of your capabilities, standard rehabilitation of a valuable asset who was temporarily sidelined by political considerations. By this time tomorrow, the story everyone at Echo will be telling is how Captain Chen was finally vindicated by the declassified truth. Maya accepted the chip, feeling its weight, a small piece of technology that represented her return from exile, her reintegration into the shadow world where she had once excelled. And the real story? The real story is that someone is targeting a program that doesn't officially exist. Using resources that suggest state-level backing, Hayes said, all pretense of casual conversation gone. The real story is that we're facing an intelligence threat unlike anything we've encountered before, and we need our best people in the field to counter it. The real story, Captain Chen, is that whatever happened 3 months ago was just the opening move in a game that's becoming increasingly dangerous. Maya tucked the data chip into a secure pocket, her decision already made. The past 3 months at Firebase Echo had been a necessary sacrifice, a period of exile that had protected greater interests than her own career or reputation. But if Hayes was here personally, if Quantum Shift was bringing her back into active operations, then the situation was far more serious than even the declassified report suggested. "When do I leave?" she asked, the question containing her acceptance of whatever mission lay ahead. "Transport departs in 90 minutes, Hayes replied. "Just enough time for you to gather your personal effects and for the base commander to receive official notification of your transfer. Your equipment and briefing package will be waiting on the aircraft." Maya nodded, mentally cataloging the few possessions she would need to collect from her quarters. Most of what defined her, her training, her skills, her commitment to missions, that existed in the spaces between official operations, wasn't physical. Couldn't be packed into a duffel bag or left behind in a remote mountain outpost. "One more thing, Captain," Hayes said as they prepared to leave the office. "The after-action report isn't just for show. What you did during Shadowfall, the choice you made to protect the program even at personal cost, it matters. There are very few people who would have made the same decision under that kind of pressure." Coming from Hayes, whose legendary status within intelligence circles was built on decades of operations that had never been officially acknowledged, this statement was more than mere praise. It was recognition from someone who understood exactly what such sacrifices cost and why they were sometimes necessary. "Thank you, Colonel," Maya said simply, knowing that excessive gratitude would be neither expected nor welcomed. In their world, doing what was required was simply part of the commitment they had all made. As they walked back into the command center, Maya noticed the change immediately. The atmosphere had shifted, the hushed conversations and sidelong glances replaced by something that felt almost like respect. Word traveled fast on small bases, and somehow through official channels or the informal network that connected all military installations, people already knew that the after-action report had changed the narrative about Captain Chen. Major Dawson approached them, his expression carefully neutral, but his eyes reflecting a new understanding. "Colonel Hayes has explained your transfer orders, Captain. While Firebase Echo will lose a valuable asset, it seems you're needed for more pressing matters elsewhere." "Yes, sir," Maya replied, maintaining the professional demeanor that had carried her through 3 months of whispers and speculation. "I appreciate the opportunities I've had here at Echo." Dawson nodded, then extended his hand in a gesture that conveyed more than formal courtesy. "Good hunting, Captain Chen. Whatever comes next, I have a feeling you're exactly the right person for it." As Maya shook his hand, she felt the weight of her hidden pin against her collar, the stylized owl with outstretched wings embracing a dagger, the symbol of Quantum Shift that had defined her true mission for the past 5 years. The whispers would change now, the story would evolve, but the fundamental truth remained the same. Some missions existed beyond official recognition. Some operators worked in shadows that never saw light, and sometimes the most important victories were the ones that could never be acknowledged. She had 90 minutes to prepare for whatever came next, 90 minutes before returning to the world where she truly belonged. Maya Chen straightened her shoulders and headed toward her quarters, ready to continue serving in ways that most people would never understand and history would never record. The transport helicopter thundered through the darkening sky, fighting against crosswinds and weather patterns that seemed determined to push it off course. Inside, Captain Maya Chen sat alone, separated from the crew by the specialized equipment that filled most of the aircraft's cargo space. The declassified after-action report sat on her lap like a talisman, physical proof that her 3-month exile at Firebase Echo hadn't been the career-ending punishment everyone had assumed. Colonel Hayes had departed on a separate aircraft, moving in the opposite direction as part of the elaborate security protocols that governed quantum shift operations. Compartmentalization is survival, Hayes had reminded Maya during their brief conversation on the tarmac. Even within the program, no one person knows everything. It was a fundamental principle that had kept quantum shift functioning in shadows. For years, even as other classified programs had been compromised or exposed. Maya studied the secure tablet Hayes had provided, absorbing mission details with the focused intensity that had once made her an exceptional intelligence analyst before. Her field capabilities had been recognized. The situation in Sarajevo was complex. 3 quantum shift operators missing, each after reporting similar anomalies in local intelligence networks. The pattern suggested a coordinated effort to identify and neutralize program assets. But the question remained, who had the capability to identify operators that officially didn't exist? "Captain," the pilot's voice crackled through her headset. "We're diverting to secondary extraction point. Weather's making primary LZ untenable." "Understood," Maya replied, already calculating how this would affect her timeline. The secondary extraction point would add nearly 2 hours to her journey, but quantum shift operators were trained to adapt to changing conditions without losing focus on mission objectives. The helicopter banked sharply, dropping altitude to stay beneath the worst of the storm. Through the small window, Maya caught glimpses of rugged terrain sliding past beneath them, mountains giving way to foothills, then to the more cultivated landscapes of regions where civilization had managed to establish a tentative foothold. The transition mirrored her own journey, from the isolation of Firebase Echo back to the complex world of covert operations and international intrigue. As they flew, Maya's thoughts returned to Operation Shadowfall, to the moment when everything had changed. The neural interface implanted at the base of her skull, technology that existed decades ahead of what was publicly known, had delivered commands override order directly to her brain, even as bullets tore through the air around her team. "Stand down. Do not engage specific targets. Maintain cover protocols at all costs." In that instant, she had made her choice, had allowed herself to appear frozen, paralyzed by fear, rather than reveal capabilities that would have compromised the entire program. She had sacrificed her reputation to protect a secret bigger than herself, bigger than any single mission or operator. And now apparently that secret was in danger anyway. The helicopter touched down at a nondescript airfield outside Belgrade, Serbia, its perimeter marked only by dim runway lights and a single hangar where a sleek corporate jet waited with engines already warming. The transition took less than 7 minutes, Maya moving from helicopter to jet with the efficient economy of movement that characterized all her actions, while ground crew transferred specialized equipment with practiced precision. Inside the jet, Maya found her mission handler waiting, Dr. Elise Warner, Quantum Shift's chief intelligence analyst and the person responsible for identifying patterns across operations that no individual operator could see. Warner was in her late 50s, her silver hair cut in a practical style that required minimal maintenance, her eyes reflecting the sharp intelligence that had made her legendary within intelligence circles. "Captain Chen," Warner greeted her as the jet taxied toward the runway. "Welcome back to the land of the living." Maya secured herself in the seat opposite Warner, noting the heavy security protocols evident in the jet's configuration signal. Dampening technology, specialized communications equipment, and subtle defensive capabilities disguised as standard business jet features. "Feels more like returning to the land of ghosts, Doctor." Warner smiled faintly at the reference. Quantum shift operators often referred to themselves as ghosts, individuals who moved through the world without leaving traces, who could disappear and reappear according to mission requirements, whose very existence was questionable to all. But a select few. An apt description, considering our current situation. 3 of our ghosts have vanished, and not according to protocol. The briefing mentioned anomalous patterns in local intelligence networks. Maya said, getting directly to the operational concerns. What exactly were they seeing? Warner activated a secure display built into the cabin wall, bringing up data. Streams that represented intelligence flows through various networks operating in the Balkans region. Each of our missing operators reported the same phenomenon, information appearing in secured channels that shouldn't have been there. Details about operational movements that were known only to a handful of people, and most concerning, references to communication protocols that are unique to quantum shift. Maya studied the patterns, her enhanced analytical training allowing her to process multiple data streams simultaneously. Someone's feeding intelligence into these networks intentionally. They're making it known that they have access to our operational details. Precisely, Warner confirmed. And when our operators investigated, they disappeared. Not killed at least. We have no confirmation of fatalities, but removed from the operational theater in a manner that suggests they were targeted specifically for their connection to the program. The jet was airborne now, climbing to cruising altitude with the smooth acceleration of an aircraft designed for speed and discretion. Maya continued analyzing the data, seeing patterns that connected across seemingly unrelated intelligence networks. They're phishing, she said finally, putting out information that only quantum shift operators would recognize as significant, then watching to see who responds. Warner nodded, pleased with Maya's quick assessment. That's our working theory. The question is who has both the knowledge to identify our operational signatures and the resources to conduct an operation of this sophistication across multiple countries and intelligence networks. State-level actors, Maya suggested, thinking through the possibilities. But not just any state, one with deep penetration into Western intelligence structures and advanced technological capabilities. That's where it gets interesting, Warner said, pulling up additional data. The technological signature doesn't match any known state-level intelligence service. It's more advanced in some ways, more primitive in others, almost as if someone created a hybrid system specifically designed to track quantum shift operations, Maya finished, seeing the implication. Someone who had inside knowledge of our protocols and technologies. The possibility hung in the air between them, too dangerous to voice explicitly, even within the secure environment of the aircraft. If quantum shift had been compromised from within, the implications were staggering, not just for the program, but for national security at the highest levels. Your mission in Sarajevo is twofold, Warner said after a moment, closing the data displays and shifting to operational planning. First, establish what happened to our missing operators. Second, identify the source of the intelligence penetration without alerting whoever is behind it that we're investigating. And if I find our missing people? Maya asked, already considering extraction scenarios and contingency plans. Primary objective is identification of the threat. Warner replied with the cool pragmatism that characterized quantum shift operations. Our people are trained for extended operations in hostile environments. They can hold out until we understand what we're dealing with. Maya nodded, understanding the priorities without needing further explanation. Quantum shift operated according to different metrics than conventional military or intelligence units. Individual operators were valuable assets, but the program's security and continued operational capability took precedence over any single mission or person. You'll be operating under diplomatic cover, Warner continued, producing credentials. That identified Maya as Catherine Miller, a mid-level State Department employee assigned to the American Embassy in Sarajevo. Your official role is conducting a security assessment, for an upcoming diplomatic visit. It gives you reason to ask questions about unusual activities and access to secure facilities without raising immediate suspicion. Maya examined the credentials, noting the meticulous attention to detail that characterized all quantum shift operational support. The photo showed her with different hairstyle and subtle changes to her appearance. Nothing dramatic, but enough that someone comparing the image to her current look would notice discrepancies that could be attributed to normal variance in how people presented day to day. Local contacts? She asked, continuing through the standard operational checklist. Minimal, Warner replied. Given the nature of the threat, we're operating under the assumption that any established networks in the region may be compromised. You'll have one verified safe house and emergency extraction protocols, but otherwise, you're operating independently. Maya absorbed this information without visible reaction, though internally she recognized the implications. Quantum shift was pulling back, limiting exposure, operating with maximum caution, all indicators that the threat was considered severe enough to warrant extreme measures. The last known location for all 3 missing operators was within the Old City District, Warner continued, bringing up a detailed map of Sarajevo on the secure display. Each disappeared after investigating an anomalous signal traced to this area. She highlighted a section of densely packed streets and buildings, many dating back centuries. Local intelligence suggests increased activity around several buildings in this zone, but satellite surveillance has been inconclusive. Maya studied the map, committing key features to memory with the practiced efficiency of someone who had trained to operate in unfamiliar environments with minimal support. Timeline for the operation? Initial authorization is for 72 hours, Warner said. After that, we reassess based on your findings. If you haven't established contact or determined the status of our missing operators by that point, we have to consider the possibility that the entire operation is compromised. The unspoken implication was clear after 72 hours. Quantum shift might initiate burn-down protocols, erasing all evidence of its presence in the region, including any operators who couldn't extract themselves. It was a harsh calculation, but one that Maya understood and accepted as part of the program's fundamental operational doctrine. Weapons and equipment? She asked, moving to the next practical consideration. Limited package, Warner replied. Given your cover, you can't carry anything that would compromise your identity if you're searched. The safe house is stocked with essential items, and you'll have access to emergency resources through dead drops if needed. Maya nodded, mentally adjusting her approach to accommodate these restrictions. Operating with minimal equipment meant relying more heavily on improvisation and intelligence rather than technological advantage as a challenge, but not an insurmountable one for operators trained in quantum shift methodologies. One more thing, Captain, Warner said, her tone shifting slightly. This operation isn't just about finding our missing people or identifying a security breach. It's about determining whether quantum shift itself has been compromised at a fundamental level. The implications of what you discover could affect the program's very existence. Maya met Warner's gaze directly, understanding the weight of responsibility being placed on her shoulders. After 3 months of exile at Firebase Echo, accused of freezing in combat when the truth had been far more complex, she was being trusted with an operation that could determine the future of the entire program. I understand, Doctor, she said simply. Warner studied her for a moment, then nodded, apparently satisfied with what she saw. We land in Sarajevo in approximately 90 minutes. From that point forward, you're Catherine Miller, State Department. Security specialist with no connection to or knowledge of any classified programs beyond standard diplomatic security protocols. And if I encounter whatever took our 3 operators? Maya asked, addressing the question that hung unspoken between them. Use your judgment, Captain, Warner replied after a moment's consideration. But remember identification of the threat. takes priority over all other considerations, including your own extraction. We need to know what we're facing, even if that knowledge comes at significant cost. The rest of the flight passed in focused preparation, Maya reviewing operational details and committing key information to memory, while Warner provided additional context about the region and the specific challenges of operating in a city like Sarajevo, where centuries of complex history created layers of security concerns that didn't exist in more straightforward environments. As the jet began its descent toward Sarajevo International Airport, Maya performed her final pre-mission ritual, systematically reviewing and then setting aside her true identity, immersing herself in the cover persona she would inhabit for the duration of the operation. By the time the aircraft touched down on Bosnian soil, Captain Maya Chen had temporarily ceased to exist, replaced by Catherine Miller, a competent but unremarkable State Department employee with no special capabilities or knowledge beyond her assigned duties. The transformation wasn't just psychological, subtle changes in posture. Speech patterns and mannerisms completed the shift from military precision to civilian professionalism. It was a skill that quantum shift operators honed through years of specialized training, the ability to become someone else so completely that even trained observers would detect no inconsistencies. Warner remained on the aircraft as Maya, now fully embodying Catherine Miller, disembarked, carrying only a standard-issue diplomatic pouch and small suitcase appropriate for a short-term assignment. An embassy vehicle waited on the tarmac, driven by a local employee who held a sign with Miller printed in block letters. "Ms. Miller?" The driver greeted her with professional courtesy. "Welcome to Sarajevo. I'm Amir, from the Embassy Transportation Division. I'll be taking you to your accommodations." "Thank you, Amir," Maya replied with Catherine Miller's voice, slightly higher pitched than her natural speaking tone, with inflections that suggested an educational background different from her actual history. "It's been a long journey. I appreciate the prompt pickup." As they drove from the airport toward the city center, Maya observed her surroundings through both Catherine Miller's perspective, noting architectural features and security arrangements as would be expected of her cover identity, and through her own trained awareness, identifying potential surveillance, mapping escape routes, and assessing the security environment with the automatic precision of a quantum shift operator. Sarajevo unfolded before her, a city where East met West, where Ottoman minarets rose alongside Austro-Hungarian facades and Soviet-era apartment blocks, where centuries of complex history created a cultural and political landscape as layered as the physical one. It was the kind of environment where secrets could hide in plain sight, where multiple intelligence services operated with varying degrees of official sanction, and where the boundaries between different spheres of influence blurred and shifted according to factors that outsiders rarely fully grasped. In other words, it was the perfect hunting ground for whoever was targeting quantum shift operators. "Your first time in Sarajevo, Ms. Miller?" Amir asked as they navigated through evening traffic. "Yes," Maya replied, maintaining Catherine Miller's persona effortlessly. "Though I've done similar security assessments in Belgrade and Zagreb previously." "Ah, then you know something of the region," Amir said with a nod. "That will help. Sarajevo has its own character, of course more complex in some ways than other Balkan capitals." "Complex is what I'm trained for," Maya said with a smile that revealed nothing of her true capabilities or purpose. "The more layers, the more interesting the work becomes." Amir glanced at her briefly in the rearview mirror, his expression suggesting mild curiosity about this American security specialist who seemed more engaged than most visiting officials. "The embassy has arranged an apartment for you in the diplomatic quarter. It's close to the old city, where I understand much of your assessment work will focus." Maya noted the detail. Either Amir was well informed about her supposed mission, or he was fishing for information about her activities. Either way, it warranted caution. Yes, the old city is central to the security planning. Historical areas always present unique challenges for diplomatic protection. The conversation continued in this vein as they drove through Sarajevo's evening streets, Maya balancing the need to maintain her cover with the operational awareness that never fully subsided. By the time they reached the apartment building in the diplomatic quarter, she had established a baseline understanding of the city's rhythm and flow, the way people moved through public spaces, the visible security presence, and the subtle indicators of less obvious surveillance. "Here we are, Ms. Miller," Emir announced as they pulled up to a modern building with the understated security features typical of diplomatic residences. "The embassy has left a welcome package in your apartment with essential information. Is there anything else you need this evening?" "This is perfect, thank you," Maya replied, gathering her minimal luggage. "I'll review the materials tonight and be ready to start work in the morning." Emir helped her with her suitcase, maintaining the professional courtesy expected of embassy staff. As he handed her the apartment keys, he added, "The embassy security officer asked me to remind you that parts of the old city can be unpredictable after dark. It might be best to conduct your assessments during daylight hours, at least until you're familiar with the area." Maya filed away this information, noting both the warning itself and the fact that it had been communicated through a driver rather than through official channels. "I appreciate the advice. Security assessments always work best when they account for local knowledge." Once inside the apartment, Maya performed a thorough security sweep checking for surveillance devices, verifying exit routes, and confirming that the space matched the specifications provided in her briefing. Only after establishing that the apartment was secure did she allow herself to access the welcome package left by the embassy, which contained both materials appropriate for her cover identity and several carefully disguised items that connected to her actual mission. One of these was a seemingly ordinary tourist guidebook that contained, hidden within its electronic components, detailed information about the last known locations of the missing quantum shift operators and secure communication protocols for emergency extraction. Another was a diplomatic security credential that doubled as an access tool for certain secure systems and facilities. Maya spent the next 2 hours meticulously reviewing this information, planning her approach for the following day, and establishing the mental framework that would allow her to operate effectively in an environment where threats could emerge from any direction. As she worked, she was acutely aware of the stakes involved, not just the lives of 3 missing operators, but potentially the future of quantum shift itself. The program had been created to fill a critical gap in national security capabilities, to operate in spaces where conventional military and intelligence agencies couldn't function effectively due to political, legal, or operational constraints. If it had been compromised, the implications extended far beyond the immediate threat to individual operators. As night settled over Sarajevo, Maya completed her preparations and allowed herself a brief period of the controlled rest that quantum shift operators were trained to use in place of normal sleep during active missions. In this state, not fully unconscious but deeply restorative, she would be alert to any threat while still maintaining the cognitive function necessary for complex operations. Tomorrow, Catherine Miller would begin her official duties as a State Department security specialist, conducting a routine assessment for an upcoming diplomatic visit. And beneath that cover, Maya Chen would begin hunting for answers about what had happened to 3 ghosts who had vanished in a city where centuries of secrets layered upon each other like the stones of its ancient walls. The mission clock was running. 72 hours to find missing operators, identify an unknown threat, and determine whether quantum shift itself had been compromised from within. 72 hours before burn-down protocols might be initiated, erasing all evidence of the program's existence in the region, including any operators who couldn't extract themselves in time. Maya closed her eyes, entering the controlled rest state with the disciplined focus that had once made her one of quantum shift's most effective field operators. Whatever challenges awaited in Sarajevo's ancient streets, she would face them with the same commitment that had sustained her through 3 months of exile. At Firebase Echo, the understanding that some missions transcended personal considerations, some secrets were worth protecting at any cost, and some oaths, once taken, could never be broken. Morning light filtered through the narrow streets of Sarajevo's old city, casting long shadows across cobblestones, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Maya moved through the Basjar Zija district with the practiced nonchalance of Catherine Miller, State Department security specialist, clipboard in hand, ostensibly making notes about sightlines and potential vulnerabilities for an upcoming diplomatic visit. Her actual mission remained invisible to those around her, a ghost hunting other ghosts in a city layered with history and secrets. The last known location of Operative Keller, the first quantum shift agent to disappear, was a small cafe tucked into a corner of the old market square. Maya approached it indirectly, spending an hour conducting legitimate security assessments of surrounding buildings to establish her cover identity's patterns before finally taking a seat at an outdoor table with clear views of both the market and the narrow streets leading away from it. "Coffee, please," she told the waiter in serviceable Bosnian, maintaining Catherine Miller's slight American accent. "And perhaps you could recommend something to eat. I'm new to the city." The interaction was mundane, forgettable precisely as intended. As the waiter described local specialties, Maya scanned the area with the heightened situational awareness that had been enhanced through Quantum Shift's specialized training programs. She noted security cameras positioned at key intersections, identified plainclothes police officers moving through the crowd, and cataloged individuals whose behavior suggested they might be conducting surveillance. Nothing immediately alarming presented itself, which was itself concerning. For 3 quantum shift operators to have disappeared without triggering obvious security responses, whoever was responsible must have exceptional capabilities and sophisticated operational protocols. The waiter returned with her coffee and a small plate of brek, a traditional pastry filled with meat and spices. Maya thanked him and continued her observation, using the clipboard and her phone to maintain the appearance of conducting routine security work while actually mapping patterns of movement through the square. According to the mission briefing, Keller had been investigating an anomalous signal traced to a building just off the main square, a former Ottoman-era merchant's house now divided into several small businesses. Maya made a show of photographing architectural features with her cover identity phone, while actually capturing images that would later be analyzed for security anomalies and surveillance indicators. As she worked, a text message arrived on Catherine Miller's official State Department phone. "Security meeting at Embassy, 1400 hours. Attendance mandatory, Deputy Chief of Mission." Maya noted the message with mild professional concern appropriate to her cover identity, while internally analyzing it for operational implications. She hadn't been briefed about any embassy security meeting, which meant either an unexpected development in the diplomatic situation or, more likely, someone was attempting to track her movements and activities. She finished her coffee, paid the bill, and continued her survey of the area, gradually working her way toward the building Keller had been investigating. From the outside, it appeared unremarkable, a well-maintained historical structure housing a small art gallery, a tourist shop selling traditional crafts, and what looked like professional offices on the upper floors. Maya entered the tourist shop with Catherine Miller's casual interest, browsing hand-woven textiles and copper coffee sets, while observing the space with professional precision. Nothing immediately triggered her operational instincts. The shop appeared to be exactly what it presented itself as, a business catering to visitors looking for authentic local crafts. The gallery next door proved more interesting. Though small, it displayed sophisticated security measures disguised as standard art protection, systems motion sensors positioned to track people rather than protect artwork, cameras with fields, a view that covered entry and exit points with suspicious thoroughness, and staff whose attentiveness suggested training beyond what typical gallery attendants would receive. Maya moved through the space with Catherine, Miller's appreciative but casual interest in the displayed works, contemporary pieces that incorporated traditional Bosnian visual elements with modern techniques. As she studied a particularly striking mixed media work, she noted a staff member speaking quietly into what appeared to be a standard communications device, but which her trained eye recognized as significantly more advanced technology. Maintaining her cover, she spent another 15 minutes in the gallery before departing, making sure to leave Catherine Miller's professional card with the attendant. The Deputy Chief of Mission has expressed interest in local art for the embassy, she explained with the slightly officious tone of a mid-level bureaucrat. If you have a catalog, I'd be happy to include it in my recommendations. The attendant accepted the card with a professional smile that revealed nothing. Of course. We're always pleased to work with diplomatic missions. I'll make sure our director contacts you directly. Maya left the gallery and continued her survey of the area, mentally flagging the gallery for further investigation while maintaining the routine patterns expected of her cover identity. By noon, she had completed an initial assessment of the entire zone where Keller had disappeared, identifying several locations of interest without detecting any immediate threat to her own operational security. The embassy security meeting at 1400 hours represented both a challenge and an opportunity. If legitimate, it would reinforce her cover identity while potentially providing useful information about the local security environment, if not if. It was an attempt to track her activities or test her identity. It would reveal that someone had already taken notice of her presence in the city. Either way, she would attend as Catherine Miller, State Department security specialist, bringing nothing with her that couldn't be explained by that identity, and maintaining the carefully constructed persona that separated her from her true capabilities and mission. The American Embassy in Sarajevo occupied a modern compound on the outskirts of the city, its architecture balancing security requirements with diplomatic presence. Maya arrived 20 minutes early for the meeting, as would be expected of a conscientious security professional, presenting her credentials at the main gate and submitting to standard security screening with the mild impatience of someone who conducted such procedures herself rather than usually being subject to them. Ms. Miller, the Marine security guard, greeted her after verifying her identification. The meeting will be in Conference Room B. Do you know where that is? I haven't been to this embassy before, Maya replied with Catherine Miller's professional courtesy. Could you point me in the right direction? Of course. Through the main lobby, take the second corridor on the right, then it's the third door on the left. The regional security officer asked me to let you know he'd like a word before the meeting begins. Maya filed away this information, another potential indicator that someone was taking special interest in Catherine Miller's activities. Thank you. I'll head that way now. The embassy interior followed the standardized layout used across American diplomatic facilities worldwide, designed to balance security considerations with functional requirements. Maya navigated the corridors with the confidence of someone familiar with such environments, noting security camera positions, access control points, and the presence of both overt and covert security measures. Conference Room B proved to be a mid-sized meeting space with a central table that could accommodate approximately 15 people, currently set up with notepads, water bottles, and the standard accoutrements of diplomatic meetings. Maya was the first to arrive, which allowed her to select a seat with optimal views of both the door and the room's other occupants when they arrived. 5 minutes later, a man entered whom Maya immediately identified as the embassy's regional security officer, despite having never met him before. His bearing, the way he scanned the room upon entering, and the subtle indicators of concealed equipment all marked him as security personnel. Catherine Miller? He asked, extending his hand. "David Mercer, Regional Security Officer. Thanks for making time for this meeting." Maya shook his hand with Catherine Miller's professional grip. "Of course. Security assessments are most effective when coordinated with embassy personnel." Mercer nodded, studying her with the careful attention of someone whose job involved assessing potential threats. "Your arrival was somewhat unexpected. We typically receive more advance notice for security assessments related to diplomatic visits. It was a probe, a test of her cover identity and story." Maya responded with Catherine Miller's mild professional frustration. "That seems to be the trend lately. The Deputy Assistant Secretary's office has been pushing for faster turnaround on these assessments. I was in Zagreb completing a similar project when I received the assignment for Sarajevo. The explanation was plausible, consistent with known state department practices and difficult to immediately verify or disprove all characteristics of an effective cover story." Mercer seemed to accept it with professional resignation familiar to anyone who dealt with bureaucratic inefficiencies. "Well, we'll work with what we've got," he said. "The purpose of today's meeting is to coordinate security preparations for next month's visit by the Assistant Secretary. We've had some unusual activity in the city recently that has raised concerns." "What kind of unusual activity?" Maya asked, allowing Catherine Miller's professional interest to show while carefully monitoring Mercer's response for any indications that this might be connected to the disappearance of quantum shift operators. "Increased surveillance of diplomatic personnel, particularly around the Old City," Mercer replied, his expression revealing nothing beyond professional concern. "And some anomalies in local communications networks that our technical team hasn't been able to fully explain." The description matched the patterns that the missing operators had reported before their disappearance. Maya maintained Catherine Miller's composed professional interest while internally shifting to heightened alert. "Any specific areas of concern I should be aware of in my assessment?" "We'll cover that during the briefing," Mercer said as other embassy personnel began entering the room. "But I'd appreciate your perspective on the Old City district, particularly around the Basazija area, since you've been conducting surveys there today." The reference to her specific activities that morning confirmed that Maya was being monitored, though whether by standard embassy security, tracking diplomatic personnel, or by whoever had taken the quantum shift operators remained unclear. She responded with Catherine Miller's straightforward professionalism. "Happy to share my observations. The area presents some unique challenges from a security standpoint: limited vehicle access, dense pedestrian zones, historical buildings with multiple entrance and exit points, but nothing that can't be managed with proper advance work and coordination with local authorities." Mercer nodded, apparently satisfied with her response, and moved to greet other arriving personnel. The meeting proceeded with the standard protocols of diplomatic security planning, threat assessments, logistical considerations, coordination with local law enforcement, and contingency planning for various scenarios. Maya participated as Catherine Miller would, offering professional insights while maintaining her cover identity's limitations and perspective. Throughout the meeting, she conducted her own assessment, identifying which embassy personnel seemed to have access to information beyond their official roles, noting who asked questions that probed at her cover identity, and mapping the informal power relationships that existed beneath the official organizational structure. 2 individuals triggered her operational instincts. The first was a cultural affairs officer named Sarah Jenkins, whose questions demonstrated knowledge of security protocols beyond what her position would typically require. The second was a communications specialist named Robert Chen, no relation to Maya's actual identity, who took minimal notes during security discussions, but became intensely focused whenever technical systems or communications networks were mentioned. Neither displayed overt indicators of hostile intent or counterintelligence functions, but their behavior patterns were consistent with intelligence officers operating under diplomatic cover. Common practice across all national security services, including American ones. Whether they represented legitimate U.S. interests or something else remained to be determined. The meeting concluded after 90 minutes with action items assigned and follow-up procedures established. Maya prepared to leave with the others when Mercer approached her again. "Ms. Miller, do you have time for a brief follow-up? There are some additional security concerns specific to your assessment areas that we should discuss privately." The request could be entirely legitimate, a security officer sharing sensitive information with a colleague, or it could be an attempt to isolate her for more intensive questioning. Maya responded with Catherine Miller's professional courtesy. "Of course. Now, or would you prefer to schedule a time later today?" "Now would be best," Mercer replied. "We can use my office. It's more secure for sensitive discussions." Maya followed him through the embassy corridors to a modest office in the security section, noting both the official security measures visible to all personnel and the more subtle, protective systems that only someone with specialized training would recognize. Mercer's office itself was standard issue for his position: functional furniture, secure communications equipment, and the organized efficiency of a professional security operator. "Please have a seat," Mercer said, closing the door and activating what appeared to be a standard privacy system, but which Maya recognized as significantly more advanced technology than would typically be available to a regional security officer. At a mid-sized embassy, the activation of such sophisticated counter-surveillance measures shifted Maya's assessment of the situation. Either Mercer was discussing legitimate but highly sensitive security concerns, or this was an operational test of her cover identity. She maintained Catherine Miller's professional demeanor while mentally preparing for multiple contingencies. "Ms. Miller," Mercer began once the privacy system was active, "I'll be direct. 3 American citizens have disappeared in Sarajevo over the past month. All 3 were here on official business, though not directly connected to the embassy. All 3 were last seen in the Old City area where you've been conducting your assessment." The description matched the missing quantum shift operators precisely, though presented in terms that a State Department security specialist would understand. Without raising questions about classified programs, Maya responded with Catherine Miller's professional concern. "I wasn't briefed on any missing American personnel. That would certainly affect my security assessment parameters. Do we have any indication of what happened to them?" Mercer studied her carefully before responding. "Nothing conclusive. Local authorities are investigating, but with limited cooperation. Each individual was operating independently, conducting specialized assessments similar to your current assignment. The parallel was too precise to be coincidental." Mercer was either testing whether Maya had knowledge beyond her cover identity, or warning her about potential threats to her own safety. She maintained Catherine Miller's perspective while acknowledging the implicit warning. "I appreciate you sharing this information. Should I adjust my assessment protocols or limit my activities in certain areas?" "That's your professional judgment call," Mercer replied, still watching her with careful attention. "But I would recommend caution, particularly around certain establishments in the Old City. There's a small art gallery near the main square that has connections to individuals of security interest, and a cafe on the eastern side of the market that has been associated with unusual surveillance activity." Both locations matched sites Maya had identified in her morning assessment: the gallery she had visited and a cafe near where Keller had last been seen. Mercer was providing information that went beyond what would typically be shared with a visiting security specialist, which suggested either special concern for her safety or an attempt to gauge her reaction to locations connected to the missing operators. "I'll factor that into my assessment plan," Maya said with Catherine Miller's professional appreciation. "Are there specific individuals I should be aware of or avoid contact with?" "We're still developing that intelligence," Mercer sighed, his expression revealing nothing beyond professional concern. But there has been increased activity by several groups that blend intelligence gathering with more conventional criminal enterprises. The line between state actors, private interests, and organized crime can be particularly blurry in this region. It was a diplomatic way of saying that multiple intelligence services were operating in Sarajevo, using various cover organizations and sometimes working with local criminal networks. Standard tradecraft in regions where direct intelligence operations might be politically problematic. One last thing, Mercer added as Maya prepared to leave. We've noticed some anomalies in local communications networks, unusual signal patterns, encrypted transmissions that don't match known protocols, surveillance indicators that suggest sophisticated technical capabilities. If you encounter anything unusual in your assessment, I'd appreciate immediate notification rather than waiting for your final report. Maya recognized the request as both a legitimate security concern and a potential trap. If she demonstrated knowledge or capabilities beyond what Catherine Miller should possess, it would compromise her cover. If she ignored genuine security threats, it could endanger her mission and potentially her life. Of course, she replied with the professional caution of an experienced security specialist. Though my technical expertise is more focused on physical security assessments than signals intelligence, if I encounter anything that seems relevant, I'll coordinate with your team. Mercer seemed satisfied with this response. That's all I wanted to cover. Thank you for your time, Ms. Miller. The embassy vehicles are available if you need transportation for your assessment activities. I appreciate that, but I find walking gives me a better feel for the security environment. Maya replied, maintaining Catherine Miller's professional preferences. Unless there are specific safety concerns that would make that inadvisable? Use your judgment, Mercer said, rising to indicate the meeting was concluded. Sarajevo is generally safe for diplomatic personnel during daylight hours. After dark, standard security protocols apply maintain communication capabilities, stick to well-traveled areas, and report any concerns immediately. Maya left the embassy with her cover identity intact, but her operational assessment significantly updated. The meeting had confirmed several key points. American officials were aware of the missing operators, even if they didn't know their true affiliations. Sophisticated surveillance systems were operating in the city beyond what would be expected in a routine diplomatic environment. And someone, possibly Mercer himself, was taking special interest in her activities. As she made her way back toward the old city, ostensibly continuing her security assessment, Maya analyzed the implications. The most concerning possibility was that Mercer or others at the embassy might be connected to whatever had compromised the quantum shift operators. The program's extreme compartmentalization meant that even within American intelligence and diplomatic services, very few individuals knew of its existence or recognized its operational signatures. The alternative was equally concerning, that legitimate American security services had detected anomalous activities connected to the missing operators, but didn't understand what they were observing, potentially leading to counterintelligence operations that might interfere with Maya's mission without intending to. Either way, she needed to accelerate her investigation. With evidence mounting that sophisticated actors were tracking activities connected to quantum shift, the window for identifying what had happened to the missing operators and whether the program itself had been compromised was likely closing rapidly. Maya spent the remainder of the afternoon conducting legitimate security assessments in areas progressively farther from the zones where the operators had disappeared, establishing patterns that would appear normal for her cover identity while preparing for more focused investigation after dark. As the sun began to set over Sarajevo's distinctive skyline, where minarets and church spires rose together against the backdrop of surrounding mountains, she made her way to a small restaurant, recommended in the tourist guidebook that doubled as her secure mission reference. The restaurant itself was unremarkable, a family-owned establishment serving traditional Bosnian cuisine to a mix of locals and visitors. What made it operationally significant was its location directly across from a building that had been flagged in the mission briefing as a possible surveillance point, and its proximity to the safe house established for emergency use. Maya dined alone, maintaining Catherine Miller's professional solitude while observing the building opposite with careful attention that never crossed into obvious surveillance. As night settled over the city, the patterns of movement changed. Tourists retreating to hotels and restaurants, locals returning home or gathering in neighborhood establishments, and the subtle shift in security presence that marked the transition from day to night operations. When she finished her meal, Maya left a generous but not excessive tip and departed the restaurant, beginning what appeared to be a casual evening walk through the old city, but was actually a carefully planned route that would allow her to approach key locations of interest without establishing obvious patterns. As she moved through the darkening streets, the weight of her mission settled more firmly on her shoulders. 3 missing operators, a potential compromise of quantum shift itself, and less than 48 hours remaining before burn-down protocols might be initiated. Whatever had happened to her fellow ghosts, Maya was determined to uncover the truth, not just because they were colleagues in a classified program that officially didn't exist, but because they represented something more fundamental: the commitment to serve in shadows where recognition was impossible and sacrifice was measured not in medals or commendations but in the quiet knowledge that some missions mattered precisely because they would never be acknowledged at all. The after-action report that had cleared her name following Operation Shadowfall had recognized this truth, that sometimes the most important service came with the heaviest personal cost. As she moved deeper into Sarajevo's ancient streets, following the trail of operators who had disappeared while serving that same principle, Maya carried with her the certainty that whatever she discovered in the hours ahead, she would honor that commitment to its fullest measure. The true test of character, after all, wasn't what you did when people were watching, but what you chose when no one would ever know what price you had paid. For a ghost, that was the only measure that truly mattered. Night had fully descended over Sarajevo, transforming the ancient city into a landscape of shadows and selective illumination. Maya moved through the darkness with purpose disguised as casual exploration, the confident stride of Catherine Miller providing cover for the heightened awareness of a quantum shift operative hunting for answers. The art gallery that had triggered her operational instincts earlier was now closed, its windows darkened except for security lighting that cast geometric patterns across displays of contemporary Bosnian art. Maya observed it from a cafe across the square, noting that despite the closed sign, subtle indicators suggested activity inside, occasional movement visible through upper windows, the brief appearance of a security guard who seemed more alert than standard overnight staff would typically be. While maintaining her cover as an American diplomat enjoying an evening coffee, Maya accessed a secure communication channel disguised within Catherine Miller's State Department phone, sending an encrypted status update to her handler through systems designed to be undetectable to all but the most sophisticated surveillance. The message was deliberately sparse standard check-in protocols with no actionable intelligence yet to report. As she finished her coffee, a group of young Bosnians entered the cafe, their animated conversation and laughter creating a momentary distraction that Maya used to slip away from her table. Instead of exiting through the main door, she moved toward the restrooms at the back of the establishment, then through a service corridor that connected to an adjacent building, a pathway she had identified during her afternoon reconnaissance. This indirect approach allowed her to circle behind the gallery without establishing an obvious surveillance pattern, emerging into a narrow alley that provided access to the building's rear entrance. From this vantage point, she could observe activities invisible from the main square, specifically the arrival of a nondescript van whose generic appearance was contradicted by the professional precision with which its occupants unloaded what appeared to be standard shipping crates. but which Maya recognized as specialized equipment containers. One of the men supervising the unloading caught her attention immediately, not because he stood out, but because of how perfectly he blended into the environment, despite clearly not being local. His movements displayed the controlled economy of someone with advanced tactical training, his positioning giving him optimal awareness of potential approach vectors, his interactions with others suggesting a command role within whatever operation was underway. Maya captured images using specialized technology embedded in what appeared to be ordinary glasses, the data streaming to secure storage through encrypted channels that operated on frequencies designed to bypass standard detection systems. While Catherine Miller would have no reason to be in this alley, a wrong turn while looking for her hotel would provide adequate cover if challenged, a common tourist mistake in the winding streets of Sarajevo's old city. No challenge came. The operational team was focused on their task, exhibiting the target fixation that often affected even trained personnel during critical phases of a mission. Maya observed for precisely 11 minutes, long enough to gather useful intelligence without establishing a pattern that might trigger counter-surveillance awareness, then withdrew using another indirect route that brought her back to more populated streets where Catherine Miller's presence would seem natural. Her next objective was a small coffeehouse near the eastern edge of the old market, the last known location of Operative Ellis, the second quantum shift agent to disappear. Unlike the gallery, the coffeehouse remained open, serving a mix of locals and tourists seeking authentic Bosnian coffee served in traditional copper jezvas with accompanying raihat lokum, a sweet confection that complemented the strong, unfiltered coffee. Maya entered with Catherine Miller's confident curiosity, selecting a table that offered clear views of both the main room and the entrance, while appearing to be chosen simply for its comfort. She ordered in functional Bosnian, her accent marking her as American but her attempt at the local language creating positive rapport with the server. "First time in Sarajevo?" the server asked in English, responding to her evident foreignness with the hospitality for which the region was known. "Yes," Maya replied with Catherine Miller's engaging professionalism. "I'm here on business, but trying to experience some local culture when I can." "Then you must try our coffee the traditional way," the server insisted. "Strong, sweet, and with patience, you let the ground settle before drinking." Maya smiled with genuine appreciation for the cultural exchange that formed part of her cover. "I'd like that very much." As the server moved away to prepare her order, Maya conducted a careful assessment of the coffeehouse and its occupants. Most were clearly locals or standard tourists, but 3 individuals triggered her operational awareness. A woman working on a laptop whose typing patterns didn't match the text appearing on her screen. A middle-aged man reading a newspaper who hadn't turned a page in 17 minutes. And a younger man at the counter whose casual posture couldn't quite disguise the alertness in his eyes as they continuously scanned the room. The pattern suggested surveillance, but not necessarily connected to her personally. This could be standard intelligence gathering in a location frequented by diplomats and international visitors, or it could be specifically related to quantum shift operations. Either way, it confirmed that the coffeehouse was more than it appeared to be. Maya's coffee arrived with ceremonial flourish, the server explaining the traditional method of preparation and consumption with evident pride. She thanked him with Catherine Miller's cultural appreciation while continuing her subtle observation of the space and its occupants. After 23 minutes, an appropriate duration for someone enjoying traditional coffee, Maya paid her bill and departed, but not before accidentally dropping her tourist map near the table occupied by the woman with the laptop. The brief interaction as the woman politely retrieved and returned the map allowed Maya to confirm her initial assessment. The woman's movements displayed the controlled precision of someone with tactical training and a barely perceptible communications device was visible behind her ear when she leaned forward. Outside, the night had deepened. The old city's narrow streets now illuminated primarily by the warm glow from shop windows and the occasional street lamp. Maya moved with purpose that appeared to be a hotel-bound tourist, while actually implementing a complex counter-surveillance route designed to identify anyone who might be tracking her movements. The pattern confirmed her suspicions. She had picked up a tail. Two individuals working in coordinated fashion to maintain visual contact without establishing obvious tracking patterns. Their methodology was sophisticated, suggesting professional intelligence training rather than criminal intent. Maya allowed the surveillance to continue while incorporating it into her operational planning. Sometimes being watched could reveal more than watching others. Her route took her gradually toward the third critical location, an internet cafe where Operative Diaz, the most recent quantum shift agent to disappear, had last been seen. Unlike the art gallery and coffeehouse, the internet cafe presented as exactly what it claimed to be, a utilitarian establishment, offering computer access and basic refreshments to locals and tourists needing digital connectivity. Maya entered with Catherine Miller's practical purpose, paying for an hour of computer time and selecting a terminal that allowed her to observe most of the space, while appearing to be chosen randomly. She logged into Catherine Miller's state department email account, conducting legitimate business related to her cover identity, while covertly scanning the cafe for operational indicators. Nothing immediately suggested covert activity, which itself was suspicious given the pattern established at the other locations. If 3 quantum shift operators had disappeared after investigating anomalous signals traced to specific locations, and 2 of those locations showed clear signs of intelligence operations, the absence of similar indicators at the third site suggested either exceptional operational security or a deliberate attempt to create a pattern contradiction. Maya spent 47 minutes at the internet cafe, primarily conducting actual security assessment work to maintain her cover while observing patterns of movement among staff and customers. As she prepared to leave, a notification appeared on her screen, an incoming message to Catherine Miller's official email that hadn't been routed through standard State Department servers despite appearing to originate from an authorized account. The message was brief: security anomaly detected in your operational area. Recommend immediate return to embassy for consultation. Authorization code: Blackbriar 7. It was a sophisticated attempt to manipulate her movements. The authorization code was valid for State Department security protocols, but the routing markers embedded in the message metadata revealed it had originated locally rather than from official servers. Someone with access to diplomatic security codes was attempting to direct her actions, either to remove her from an area of operational interest or to isolate her for questioning. Maya responded as Catherine Miller would, with professional concern but practical caution. She sent a brief acknowledgement indicating she would return to the embassy after completing her current assessment, establishing a timeline that would give her approximately 90 minutes before her failure to appear would trigger escalated measures. Those 90 minutes would be critical. Having confirmed suspicious activity at locations connected to the disappearance of quantum shift operators, she needed to identify the specific threat and determine whether her missing colleagues were still alive, all while maintaining her cover identity and evading the surveillance now actively tracking her movements. Maya left the internet cafe with Catherine Miller's purposeful stride, a security professional responding to a potential concern, but not exhibiting undue alarm. Her path took her not toward the embassy, but toward her assigned apartment in the diplomatic quarter, a logical destination that would maintain her cover while giving her access to secure resources. The surveillance team continued to track her, their pattern suggesting they were simply monitoring rather than preparing to intercept. Maya maintained awareness of their positions without revealing that she had detected them, allowing their presence to inform her planning rather than disrupt it. Once inside her apartment, she activated specialized counter-surveillance systems disguised as standard diplomatic security measures, creating a secure environment where she could access quantum shift resources without detection. The equipment in her diplomatic pouch included technology that allowed her to analyze the data she had gathered throughout the day, identifying patterns and connections that might reveal what had happened to her missing colleagues. The analysis confirmed her operational assessment. The art gallery, coffee house, and internet cafe formed a triangular pattern across the old city, each serving as a point in what appeared to be a sophisticated intelligence-gathering operation. The anomalous signals reported by the missing operators originated from a central location within that triangle specifically, a historic building that currently housed a research institute specializing in regional cultural studies. Maya accessed secure satellite imagery of the institute, noting that its physical security was more substantial than would be expected for an academic facility. Perimeter measures disguised as historical preservation protections, entry points, limited and controlled, and roof structures that could conceal sophisticated communications equipment. The pattern suggested a front operation for intelligence gathering, but the question remained which intelligence service, and why would they target quantum shift operators specifically? The program's extreme compartmentalization meant that very few people outside the operational structure even knew of its existence, let alone could identify its agents in the field. A disturbing possibility formed in Maya's analysis that the compromise might have come from within, that someone with access to quantum shift operational protocols had provided targeting information to an external entity. If true, it represented a catastrophic security breach that could endanger not just the missing operators, but the entire program and its missions worldwide. The secure timer on her specialized equipment showed 53 minutes remaining before her failure to report to the embassy would likely trigger escalated response measures. Maya used that time to develop an operational plan, balancing the need to investigate the research institute against the imperative to maintain her cover identity. The solution came from an unexpected direction: the legitimate security concerns that had brought Catherine Miller to Sarajevo in the first place. As a State Department security specialist assessing risks for an upcoming diplomatic visit, she would have valid professional interest in all facilities within the operational area, including cultural institutions that might be included in official itineraries. Maya crafted a formal request from Catherine Miller to the Research Institute, scheduling a security assessment visit for the following morning. The request went through official channels, establishing legitimate reason for her presence while placing potential adversaries in the position of either accepting the visit or raising suspicions by refusing access to a U.S. diplomatic security officer. With that preparation complete, Maya implemented the next phase of her plan, identifying the surveillance team's patterns and capabilities to determine whether they represented a direct threat to her mission. Using techniques developed specifically for quantum shift operators, she created a subtle environmental disturbance that would force the surveillance team to adjust their positions, revealing their coordination protocols and response patterns. The results confirmed her assessment. The team was professional, well-equipped, and operating with sophisticated awareness of counter-surveillance techniques. Their response patterns matched methodologies associated with several possible entities, but subtle indicators suggested private contractors rather than direct state intelligence. Operatives, mercenaries with advanced training serving whoever had established the operation targeting quantum shift, with 14 minutes remaining before her failure to report to the embassy would trigger escalation. Maya initiated the final element of her evening's operational plan, a controlled communication that would appear to be Catherine Miller responding to the security alert while actually serving Maya's intelligence-gathering needs. She contacted the embassy security office, explaining that she had received the alert while conducting her assessment and had returned to her apartment to review her findings before reporting. The explanation was plausible for her cover identity and the reference to specific security assessment activities. established legitimate reason for her movements throughout the day. "I'll come in first thing tomorrow morning to discuss my observations," she told the duty officer, maintaining Catherine Miller's professional focus. "There are several locations I've identified that warrant more detailed assessment, including a research institute that might be included in the Assistant Secretary's cultural outreach activities." The duty officer accepted this with standard acknowledgement, suggesting no immediate concerns about her activities or location. It bought her the time needed to complete her investigation while maintaining her cover identity's legitimate functions. With external pressures temporarily managed, Maya turned to the most critical element of her mission, determining whether the missing quantum shift operators were still alive and, if so, where they were being held. The patterns she had identified suggested that if they had been captured rather than eliminated, they would likely be held at a secure facility with sophisticated containment capabilities. The Research Institute remained the most probable location, but direct confirmation would require access to the facility itself, access she had now arranged through Catherine Miller's official request for a security assessment. Until then, she could only continue analyzing available intelligence and preparing for whatever she might discover the following day. As midnight approached, Maya initiated Quantum Shift's specialized rest protocol, a neurologically optimized state that provided essential cognitive recovery while maintaining operational awareness. In this condition, she would process the day's information at a subconscious level, while remaining alert to any threat that might emerge during the vulnerable hours of darkness. Tomorrow would bring her face to face with whatever force had targeted. Her colleagues had compromised a program designed to be uncompromisable, had created a situation where she was now the only operator positioned to discover the truth. The weight of that responsibility settled over her as she entered the controlled rest state, not just professional duty to a classified program, but personal commitment to fellow operators who had disappeared while serving the same principles that guided her own actions. The mission clock continued its inexorable countdown. Less than 36 hours remained before burndown protocols might be initiated, erasing all evidence of Quantum Shift's presence in the region, including any operators who couldn't extract themselves. 36 hours to find missing colleagues, identify an unknown threat, and determine whether the program itself had been compromised from within. As Maya's consciousness shifted to the specialized rest state, her final thoughts weren't of operational parameters or mission timelines, but of the choice she had made during Operation Shadowfall, the decision to protect program security at personal cost, to appear frozen when in fact she was making the hardest choice of all. Whatever awaited her at the Research Institute, she would face it with the same unwavering commitment to principles larger than herself, to missions that mattered, precisely because they would never receive public recognition. Sometimes the measure of a person's character wasn't found in moments of celebrated heroism, but in quiet choices made in shadows, when no one was watching and recognition was impossible. For a ghost, those choices defined everything that mattered. Maya carried that truth with her into the darkness, a sentinel waiting for dawn and whatever it would reveal about the fate of those who had walked similar paths before disappearing into Sarajevo's ancient shadows. Morning arrived with the distinctive call to prayer echoing across Sarajevo, the melodic summons floating from minarets that rose above the old city like slender fingers reaching toward heaven. Maya transitioned instantly from the specialized rest state to full operational awareness, her mind and body prepared for the critical day ahead. She began with Catherine Miller's morning routine, checking official emails, reviewing security assessment notes, and preparing for the day's scheduled activities with the methodical precision expected of a State Department security specialist. The pattern established her cover identity's continued normal functioning while allowing her to integrate operational planning into legitimate activities. The Research Institute had accepted her request for a security assessment visit, scheduling a meeting with their administrative director at 10 a.m., The prompt acceptance suggested either that the Institute had nothing to hide or that they were confident in their ability to maintain operational security, even under direct observation. Either possibility presented both challenges and opportunities for Maya's mission. She dressed in Catherine Miller's professional attire, conservative but practical, clothing appropriate for a security specialist conducting field assessments. The outfit incorporated specialized elements invisible to casual observation, fabric reinforced with ballistic weave, seams that concealed essential tools, and accessories that doubled as operational equipment while appearing to be standard professional items. Before departing for the Institute, Maya conducted a final review of all intelligence gathered over the previous 24 hours, focusing particularly on identifying patterns that might reveal what had happened to her missing colleagues. The triangulation of locations associated with their disappearances continued to center on the Research Institute, strengthening her assessment that whatever answers existed would be found there. She left the apartment at precisely 9:15 a.m., giving herself enough time to reach the Institute, while following a route that would allow her to identify any surveillance without establishing obvious counter-surveillance patterns. The morning bustle of Sarajevo provided ideal cover: locals heading to work, tourists beginning their explorations, and the general energy of a city coming fully awake, creating multiple layers of activity that made tracking a single individual challenging even for sophisticated operators. Maya detected her surveillance team almost immediately, the same pair who had tracked her movements the previous evening, now supplemented by a third individual whose positioning suggested they were serving as operational coordinator. The team maintained professional distance, their patterns indicating they were monitoring rather than preparing to intercept. She allowed them to maintain visual contact, their presence becoming an element of her operational awareness rather than a direct concern. If they were connected to whoever had taken the quantum shift operators, their behavior might reveal useful information about operational protocols and security awareness. The Research Institute occupied a restored Ottoman-era building near the center of the old city, its architecture blending historical elements with modern functionality. From the outside, it presented as exactly what it claimed to be, a scholarly institution dedicated to studying and preserving regional cultural heritage. The only indicators of more sophisticated purposes were subtle security measures disguised as historical preservation, features cameras concealed within decorative elements, access controls integrated into traditional architectural components, and sightlines optimized for defensive positioning. Maya entered the main reception area precisely at 9:55 a.m., presenting Catherine Miller's credentials with professional courtesy. "I have an appointment with the administrative director regarding a security assessment for an upcoming diplomatic visit," she explained to the receptionist, whose polished efficiency suggested training beyond standard administrative functions. "Of course, Ms. Miller. Director Petrovic is expecting you. Please follow me." The receptionist led her through the Institute's public areas, a small museum displaying cultural artifacts, research libraries with scholars bent over ancient texts, and conference rooms where academic discussions were underway. The environment appeared authentically academic, with the kind of organized intellectual chaos typical of research institutions worldwide. What distinguished this facility from standard academic environments were nearly invisible details that Maya's specialized training allowed her to detect slight variations in wall thickness, suggesting spaces between rooms that didn't appear on visible floor plans, subtle differences in security protocols between public and restricted areas, and staff whose behavioral patterns indicated awareness beyond scholarly focus. Director Petrovic received her in a handsomely appointed office that balanced academic prestige with administrative functionality. He was a distinguished man in his early 60s, with the measured demeanor of someone accustomed to navigating both intellectual and political complexities. "Ms. Miller, welcome to our humble institute," he greeted her in flawless English, rising from behind an antique desk that had likely witnessed centuries of Sarajevo's complex history. "We're honored to be considered for inclusion in the assistant secretary's visit," Maya responded with Catherine Miller's professional courtesy, expressing appreciation for the prompt accommodation of her assessment request while establishing the parameters of her supposed task. The assistant secretary has particular interest in cultural heritage preservation, especially in regions with such rich historical significance. My role is simply to ensure that security protocols can be implemented without disrupting the authentic experience. Petrovic nodded with apparent understanding. Of course, security concerns are unfortunately a reality even for cultural and academic exchanges. Please, allow me to show you our facility so you can make your assessment. The tour that followed appeared comprehensive, Petrovic guiding her through exhibition spaces, research areas, conservation laboratories, and administrative offices, with the pride of a scholar sharing his life's work. Throughout, Maya maintained Catherine Miller's focused professionalism while conducting her actual mission, identifying inconsistencies that might reveal the Institute's true purpose and any connection to the missing quantum shift operators. The inconsistencies were subtle but unmistakable to someone with her training. Sections of the building that should have been accessible but weren't included in the tour. Staff whose positioning suggested security functions rather than academic roles, and technological systems whose capabilities far exceeded the requirements of a cultural research facility. Most significantly, Maya identified a secure area occupying what appeared to be the building's substructure, space not acknowledged in the official tour, but evident from architectural inconsistencies and airflow patterns that indicated substantial underground development. If the missing operators were being held within the Institute, that substructure was the most likely location. As they completed the tour, returning to Petrovic's office for concluding discussions, Maya implemented the next phase of her operational plan, creating legitimate reason for returning to the Institute later, when different security conditions might provide opportunities for more thorough investigation. "Director Petrovic, your facility is impressive," she said, with Catherine Miller's professional appreciation. "There are several areas that would be particularly appropriate for the Assistant Secretary's interests, especially the conservation laboratory and historical document collection. Would it be possible for me to return tomorrow to take more detailed notes on specific security requirements for those areas?" Petrovic hesitated, just momentarily, but long enough for Maya to register the reaction as significant. "Of course," he said after that brief pause, "though perhaps this afternoon would be more convenient. We have a special research symposium tomorrow that might make detailed assessment more challenging." The suggestion represented either genuine academic scheduling or a strategic attempt to control her access to the facility. Either way, it provided an opportunity she could leverage for her mission. "This afternoon would be perfect," Maya agreed with Catherine Miller's flexibility. "I have an embassy meeting at noon, but could return by 3 o'clock if that suits your schedule." 3 o'clock is ideal," Petrovic confirmed. "I'll arrange for our facilities manager to assist you with any technical questions regarding security implementation." The meeting concluded with professional courtesy on both sides, Maya departing the Institute with Catherine Miller's organized efficiency, while mentally cataloging everything she had observed. The surveillance team remained in position outside, maintaining visual contact as she made her way toward the embassy for her scheduled noon meeting. That meeting, a legitimate security coordination session with embassy personnel, provided perfect cover for the next phase of her investigation. Using Catherine Miller's access to diplomatic resources, Maya requested technical specifications for buildings in the historic district, ostensibly to support her security assessment for the Assistant Secretary's visit. The documents, provided without question to a credentialed State Department security specialist, included historical architectural plans for the Research Institute, plans that confirmed her assessment about substantial substructure development. and revealed something even more significant. The building connected to an ancient tunnel system that ran beneath portions of the old city, originally constructed during Ottoman times for defensive purposes, but expanded and modernized over centuries. This discovery transformed her understanding of the operational environment. If the research institute connected to tunnel systems beneath the city, it could explain how 3 experienced operators had disappeared without trace. They hadn't been captured on the streets, but had been drawn into the substructure through specific access points and then transported through tunnels that bypassed normal security monitoring. The pattern aligned with the triangular arrangement of locations where the operators had disappeared. The art gallery, coffee house, and internet cafe might each conceal access points to the tunnel system, allowing for covert movement throughout the old city without surface exposure. It was sophisticated tradecraft, suggesting whoever had targeted Quantum Shift possessed both advanced operational capabilities and detailed knowledge of Sarajevo's historical infrastructure. With this new understanding, Maya developed a revised operational plan for her afternoon return to the Institute. The official security assessment would provide legitimate access to areas where she could gather critical intelligence about the facility's true purpose and potentially identify access points to the substructure where her colleagues might be held. As she prepared to leave the embassy following her scheduled meeting, Maya received an unexpected communication, a message delivered by secure diplomatic courier, addressed to Catherine Miller, but encoded with markers that identified it as Quantum Shift communication. The message was brief but urgent. Burn down timeline accelerated. Extraction window closes 2,200 hours today. Confirm receipt and status. The accelerated timeline changed everything. Instead of 36 hours to complete her mission, she now had less than 10, and the most critical phase was yet to come. The decision to accelerate burn-down protocol suggested that something had changed dramatically in the operational environment, increasing the urgency of determining whether Quantum Shift had been compromised and if the missing operators could be recovered. Maya sent confirmation of receipt through secure channels, maintaining her cover identity's activities while preparing for what would now be a significantly compressed operation. Her return to the Research Institute at 3 o'clock would be her only opportunity to discover the truth before Quantum Shift erased all evidence of its presence in the region, potentially abandoning 3 operators to whatever fate had befallen them in Sarajevo's ancient shadows. The weight of that responsibility settled on her shoulders as she moved through the final preparations for her return to the Institute. Whatever awaited her there, answers, dangers, or both would determine not just the fate of her missing colleagues, but potentially the future of Quantum Shift itself. Like the moment during Operation Shadowfall when she had appeared to freeze while actually making the hardest choice possible, she now faced a decision point where personal risk had to be measured against principles that transcended individual safety. Some missions were defined by exactly those moments when an operator stood alone against unknown threats, guided only by commitment to principles that couldn't be explained to those who hadn't lived them. For Maya Chen, who had endured 3 months of exile at Firebase Echo, with her reputation in tatters, rather than compromise operational security, that commitment had never wavered. It wouldn't waver now as she prepared to confront whatever truth awaited in the shadows beneath Sarajevo's ancient streets. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.